Okay, so Jennifer Prediger, welcome to Utah Valley University. And we just watched Apartment Troubles. We have a good good number of people here. And what do you guys think about it?
That's so sweet.
So I'm gonna just turn your volume down a bit because you're loud, and I'm gonna have Mandy come up and start things off. She's going to ask you a few questions, and we'll turn it over to the group. If you have a question, don't wait till the last person's done. Just come up and sit here and wait, so she's not just waiting forever.
Mandy.
Hi, Jen.
Hello.
How are you?
You good? Thank you guys so much for watching the movie.
Thank you for talking with us. It's so funny, and everyone was laughing the whole time. So,
Thanks, guys.
okay. So I just wanted to start off by asking you kind of how you got started in this, because this is the first thing you directed. Is that right?
First feature. I can hear like a feedback thing. Is it okay for you guys? Do I sound okay?
Yeah, you're good.
I had done like directing and producing of documentaries, short form and long form. I started off with the federal government doing that, weirdly enough, but I was also doing like stand-up comedy and taking improv classes at like the Groundlings and Upright Citizens Brigade. And so, I don't know, cut to like 10 or more years later, and then everything kind of wonderfully came to fruition. I'd acted in a bunch of smaller budget independent films that have played festivals, but this was my first foray into directing a fictional narrative feature. But I directed a lot of like web videos and short form documentary things, but it's definitely a different animal for sure.
Right. So how did you get started in like the film, all the film stuff? Like, did you start by acting, or like when did you start?
It's a long, circuitous path, and it probably doesn't make nearly as much sense as what you guys are doing. But I ended up getting like a degree in college in like creative writing and psychology. Then I got a master's in psychology, and I was like working at an advertising agency, and then I also worked at a literary arts foundation, and then just a lot of kind of strange, different things. But I always knew I wanted to make movies. I just didn't know that real people made them. So I kind of was like sidestepping my way into figuring out how to do it. And then after I finished my master's, I did this fellowship with the federal government, and that's how I got this awesome job as a producer in the television and broadcasting arm of the Department of Agriculture, interestingly enough. And I got to travel all over the place, like to Hawaii and Japan. And I didn't go to Japan. I went to Hawaii with Japanese farmers, but I went to Alaska and Africa. It felt like Japan, though. Well, actually, I've never been to Japan, so I have no idea. But I hope to go there someday. Anyway, that's beside the point, guys. Sometimes I get confused. I see how Hillary Clinton does it. But so, yeah, so I got really lucky and got that job. And then at a certain point, I mean, I just really wanted to do comedy stuff. And I had a wonderful opportunity to move to New York City to work, to do an unpaid internship at The Onion. So I just jumped at the chance to do that. And then around the same time, like web video was becoming a thing. So The Onion was making web videos for the Onion News Network. And then I worked like as a journalist for the Washington Post company and a few other websites. And then eventually that led to meeting a filmmaker named Joe Swanberg, who's a mumblecore director. It's like a super indie, low budget filmmaking, and we made a movie and it got into Sundance, and then that was like this big game changer, and I was like, oh cool, I can do this. So now I'm doing this, but always you're trying to figure out how to do it and make money, which I recommend having like a specialized skill set for outside of just acting or directing. Like if you're a cinematographer or an editor, those things can go a long way too, or a sound person, though it's always good to, you know, write and create your own material and direct your own stuff.
Right. So that kind of leads into the next question I have, which, so you co-directed this with Jess, and you guys also co-wrote it. So was it collaborative like from the very beginning, or was it one of your guys' script before the other? Like, how did that whole process happen?
It was pretty cool, and I think often like there's a serendipitous element to these things too. I like to refer to it as the movie gods. But so I had been working on a movie in Connecticut, and Jess was subletting my apartment when she was working on a TV show called The Good Wife, which you guys have probably seen or at least heard of. But she was acting in that, and so she needed a place to live in New York because she was living in LA at the time. And I was working on a movie in Connecticut, as I mentioned, and the financiers of that movie happened to see a movie I was in called Red Flag that came out at the same time we were working on this other movie. And I got some good press in that moment. Like, there was a good thing in the Hollywood Reporter, and the financiers were like, oh, we like what you're doing and we think you seem like a nice person. And so they basically said, like, if you write something, we'd love to see it. We'd like to take a look at it first. So I came back from Connecticut all fired up, and Jess and I were living in the same apartment, and I've always admired her work, and we just got on really well, and we were having such a fun time. And I do find that, like, a lot of work happens really well when you cohabitate with people, even for, you know, some amount of time, because it just lets you kind of dwell in the world of the movie. So we were living together for about a week when we decided to write something together, and we both loved this British cult film called With Nail and I. That's a really fun, wonderful movie, and we were kind of both like, what if we could make like a ripped off female American version of that? So we kind of used that as a springboard and just wrote a script in 6 weeks. And it was one of those movies that came together really quickly, and we just got really lucky, and the financiers said go for it. And then we had connections to, you know, Will Forte. I had just worked with Will and played his assistant, and also ended up, I was an associate producer on this movie, so I ended up driving him around a lot. So when I told him we were making a movie, he was like, sure, I'll do it, which was amazing. Now I think he's too busy to do something like that because he's doing his TV show, Last Man on Earth. But then Jess had worked with Megan Mullally, who's well known from Will and Grace. They were in a movie together called Somebody Up There Likes Me. And Megan told Jess that if Jess was ever making a movie, to let her know, and that she'd love to do it. So we sent Megan the script, and she was like delighted and so game and so awesome. And what was really neat was she told us that, you know, out of all of the success she's had as a television actor, she'd never had a part this big in a movie, and she'd always wanted to do film. And she was like, I think she was like second or third in line to be one of the lead women in like Top Gun. Like, she'd had a lot of really close, not quite, and then she got like this great role in a TV show, and then people started thinking of her as a TV actor. So it was cool that, like, even though we had an ultra low budget and paid all of our actors $110 a day, 10 of which went to their agents, she still did it, and she was really happy to do it, which was cool. And then Jess's agent, a woman named Rhonda Price at an agency called Gersh, also represents Jeffrey Tambor, and she just nagged him until he said yes. So that was great, and that was right before Transparent, and you all have seen how great that show's done and how incredible he is in that, but we knew him before. I mean, he had also done millions of amazing things before our movie.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
I had one other question.
You can ask anything. You can just talk.
Okay. Well.
I love your haircut, by the way.
Oh, thanks.
Super cool.
Thanks. Emily could not be here, but I will ask this for her. What keeps you up at night?
Well, literally, what kept me up the other night, I was recording an audition. Sometimes when you do an audition, you self-tape. So it's like you tape it at home, and you have hopefully an actor friend who will play the other part with you. So a friend of mine was here. We were self-taping this audition, and it was probably like 11:30 at night when he left, and I heard a gunshot. I live in LA, so don't worry, this won't happen near you. But I just moved here from New York City, and it's actually like wildly more dangerous here, I guess, maybe, or at least in my neighborhood. It's a very tranquil, safe-looking neighborhood. You should come stay with me, Mandy. But no, so he left, and I heard the sound that sounded like a gunshot, and I was like, that can't be a gunshot. It's probably a car backfiring. And then the next thing I know, there are like these helicopters flying over with the spotlight like shining down, and then like police cars, and it was like going on for like over an hour, and then like it was, yeah, they were like looking for shooting suspects. So literally shooting in my neighborhood, which is the LA River is right behind my house. So people shooting guns on the LA River and then the helicopters that follow are what keep me up at night. And I have really crazy pictures of it too. It looked like a spaceship. So there was this like thing in the air with a spotlight. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, yes. Very good.
I don't know if you can tell like how crazy this is, but wait, can you? That's the helicopter, and that's my neighbor's window, and that's outside of my bedroom window.
Okay. Okay, well, yeah,
I'm so glad you asked that question.
Okay, I have one last question, and then I will let other people come up. So how much of like you and Jess is in your script? Like how much of your characters like are yourselves? And then like, did you guys improv a lot of your lines, or did you write most of it beforehand since both of you were going to be in it?
It was very scripted to a certain degree. Like we had a really strong scaffolding, or but we had a foundation to sort of work from, and then I'd say it's like 85% scripted, and then the rest are little like improvised flourishes. And then when you're working with like Will and Megan and Jeffrey, like they're just such comic geniuses that like whatever they do, you're like, yes, okay, thank you. So end of it was us. I think, both of us, okay, so this is the little tagline. It was a co-written, co-starred, and co-directed movie about codependence. And I think we both had friendships and or relationships where one person was sort of like the dominant, controlling person, and the other person was sort of like the, not submissive, but this is turning into like a whole BDSM metaphor that I didn't mean for it to. No, but like there was sort of like a narcissist, co-narcissist dynamic that we were playing with. And so in that sense, there were some like themes or experiences we'd had. But definitely that character is not like Jess. Jess is actually a really fun-loving, like sweet, kind, generous friend. And that was like one of the most beautiful things that came out of it, was like we just had this really tight friendship now. We almost killed each other a few times, but we got through that. And I think that's one of the most wonderful things about movie making, the people you get to meet and collaborate with, and hopefully create like lasting friendships and working relationships with. So there.
Awesome. I'm glad.
And I don't talk to little dolls, just so you know. Like that's
good.
Not something I do. But what were you saying? Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying I'm glad that you got to work with some animals, the cat and
the hairless cat was amazing. It was actually so strangely beautiful. I highly recommend just petting one, all of you, when you get a chance.
Okay. All right. Okay. I will let other people come up now. Thank you, Jen.
Oh, yeah. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
When you go up, please say your name.
Oh, I'm too short. Hi.
Hello.
Yeah, you can put that.
This thing? Oh, hi. I'm okay. I'm Peyton. Hi.
Hi, Peyton. How are you?
Good. So, what was the hardest thing with all your responsibilities with this film? Like with time management and stuff?
I mean, there were a lot of things to juggle. One of the great things to juggle was being a performer and also directing. I mean, one really wonderful thing about having co-directors in this situation was that we could keep an eye on each other's performances and, let each other know if we felt like we'd gotten there or not. But given that we had a very small budget and we only had 14 days to shoot, we didn't have time for playback really. So we just cruised through things, not entirely knowing sometimes what the framing of a shot was. Like sometimes I would think I was on camera. I ate like 16 jelly beans, thinking that every time I was doing it, it was being picked up. Not a single time was it ever on camera. So it was just kind of like things like that. That was the first day. And usually the first day of shooting is often the hardest because everything's wonky and people aren't in a rhythm with each other yet. So we had some issues like that. I think looking back on it, and I've seen other directors work this way, like I've recently gotten to be on set with Kevin Smith directing himself as an actor. And something that he really does is he gets fewer takes of things, but he makes sure that he goes and watches playback to make sure he's gotten what he needs. So I do feel like the next time out that I'm acting and directing myself, like I'll definitely make sure to find time to just watch the playback so you know what you're getting, and then you can readjust if you're not getting what you need. I don't know, any particular things that you feel concerned about, that you're curious about on set, and how they play out, or how they played out for us?
Like, what about your, like, the, let's think. With, like, did you guys go from, like, how, was it hard going from LA to New York? Was that, like,
That
really
was
hard?
really, we took a break actually in between shooting. So we shot like 10 days in New York and Connecticut, and then 4 days in LA. So we'd been off for about a month and a half. So we had to, you know, kind of regroup. Thankfully, the second time together, everybody just gelled really quickly and hit the ground running. And we were really lucky because our producer liked our group working together so much that she flew most of everyone out from New York. So we had like our same team. The benefit also to taking a break in between was we could kind of see where some holes were. So we could figure out some things we needed to make sure we got. So we got a chance to edit in between. I guess another thing I was going to say was that like directing mode and acting mode are very different. Like I think they use different sides of your brain. So one thing we could do is just kind of like go and set up the shot and try to, you know, just figure out what the camera was doing, and then descend into acting mode, which is a lot more emotional and, you know, comes from a crazier place a lot of the time. And you need to kind of be vulnerable and be able to cry. And if you're thinking about like the framing of something, it's a little harder to let the tears fly. So we would try to like divide that time up, like, okay, we're in director mode. Okay, now we're in actor mode. It was also really hard doing stuff with like fire on a low budget, because we didn't have anyone to, you know, we didn't have fire supervisors or anything like that. So our poor AD was just like using lighter fluid, like as we're up there grilling, like just spraying it all over the place. I mean, I think he might have even been like smoking, or he was inhaling things he shouldn't have been inhaling. Like it was not a good scene, and it felt dangerous at times. So there were things like that that you have to like keep your eye on so nothing gets out of control and people stay like focused and safe. Thankfully, no one was burned. No cats were actually cremated in the making of this movie. Well, actually, that's not true. This is terrible. My cat died while we were writing the movie, which is how a cat dying became such a prominent part of the story. My cat Pigeon died, had a heart attack while we were actually writing the script. And Jess had to go with me and one of our producers, thanks. And we had to put him to sleep. So it was so heartbreaking, but I feel like I got the whole movie to kind of
Let it
process. Yeah, yeah, I know.
Okay.
So if you ever lose an animal, great way to deal with it.
Make a movie about it. Got it.
Yes. Thanks for your questions. So nice to meet you.
All right, nice to meet you too.
Good job. I was so curious who's in that room. All I can see is this wall.
Hello.
Hola.
Hi, I'm Rudy.
How are you?
First
Hi,
off,
Rudy.
nice to meet you. First off, I want to say that your movie was fantastic. It made me laugh really hard. And I loved how you had some major stars that I'm really a big fan of, like Megan Mullally and Lance Bass.
Yay. You're so cool.
So I had a question when it came to your music. What was your process on figuring out what music to use for your film?
That's a great question. Well, the first like central piece of music is this song called Japan by a band called Coco Rossi, but that we were listening to while we were writing. And then we got really lucky while we were editing and like bumped into one of the women who's in Coco Rossi. And I met her at a laughter yoga class. And I told her that her song had really inspired us, and we'd been listening to it while we were writing. And I was like, could I like get this movie to you? And would you maybe, she was like, yeah, get it to me. So like she watched the movie and said we could use it. I mean, we had to pay like a small amount as far as music goes. I think it was like $1,500 to use the song, but it's in our trailer, I think. Yeah, it is. And it's the song Everybody Wants to Go to Japan that's playing like when they're getting in the airplane. But we had also a really incredible composer, Thomas Bartlett, who is a friend, initially a friend of Jess's, and now just we're just huge fans of him. He's a composer and has worked with like incredible musicians like Anthony and the Johnsons and Sufjan Stevens and Rufus Wainwright. So he's a wonderful pianist and composer. And we didn't have much money to do a score for the movie, but he was working in a studio, and they told us that if we came to the studio at night when the studio was otherwise closed, like if we came in around 11 at night, we could stay until like 6 in the morning. So we did that for an entire week. We came every night. We were like total like night shifters, just staying up all night, writing music. And he's at the piano, like just pounding away at it. And we would play scenes on a monitor, and he would play live to the scenes. And then we would like have a conversation. But I mean, he just had really cool instincts, and we were kind of blown away by it. It was really fun. And then he actually helped us select some music. There's a song in there that I really love called They Ate Themselves, and by a guy named Ryland Bouchard. But it was just someone that Thomas had worked with a long time ago. Anyway, yeah, I don't know if there are any particular music cues that stood out that I could tell you about that you'd want to know about.
Well, they were all fantastic. Leading up to that was, how do you know when to use music during a conversation? You know, there's a few scenes in the movie where you two are talking and there's music playing in the background, but then there are other times when there's no music and you two are still talking. How do you know when to use music during dialogue and when not to use music during dialogue?
I think with a lot of things in filmmaking, like there is a sort of instinct to it. Like you just feel like, okay, this is a moment that needs like sort of silence around it to create a greater sense of gravity, or maybe it needs levity, so you want to add music to it. Or like in the dinner scene with Megan Mullally and her husband and, you know, the other dinner guests, we had music in the background. Now, Duane, you might have to step in with this, but there's diegetic and
extra diegetic?
No, but close. But like one is like coming from a source, and like one form of music is like it's coming from something like a stereo or a car stereo or like playing in the background. Whereas, is he answering this question?
He's there. He's trying to figure it out.
Yeah, it's like I mean I could like look it up right now. Diegetic and non-diegetic, I think, but I never can remember which one it is. So one comes from a natural source, like in the background, like if I was playing music for you on my iPhone, versus like score that underlies.
I always call that score or source music.
Yes, that's also true.
Those are easier terms.
Yeah. But it's different still. It's different because source music can still be a song that you're playing in the movie, but it doesn't necessarily come from like the characters pressing play, or it's not playing in the background. Does this make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You can just say yes and then.
Yeah. Sooner or later we'll understand.
Okay.
Yeah. So one final question, and so knowing Megan Mullally's background and Willa Grace and how she's super hilarious, what hard was it for you to not laugh during your scenes with you and her, you know, just getting a little touchy-feely with you?
Oh my gosh, yeah, that was great. I thought that was a brilliant move on our parts, or my part, to like write into the script that I was constantly getting a back massage, and from all people like Megan Mullally. So it was like amazing. It was like the best time ever. So I highly recommend, if you're acting in your own work and you want to cast someone really amazing, write in a back massage. It's the greatest feeling. No, but I mean, she's so good and she's so funny. And I mean, she was doing the most surprising things too. Like she, in this one scene, and we mostly cut it out because it was a little too intense, but she kept like unhooking my bra, and she would just do it so fast, and she did it every take, and I was always like, ah! So that was incredible. But you know, she's also like, she's like our hero, right? So it's like, she's intimidating too. It's like scary to direct her because you're like, you're perfect. There is nothing I can say to you. But then there were moments where like, you're like, should I say this? And then you just let her do whatever she does because it was just magnificent. But I mean, like when we're in the scene next to the pool and we're rolling and she's like, we're just like children. I feel so free. Like we improvised that rolling. Like that wasn't in the script. And it just like, she just like went for it. And it was so funny. And the just like children line, she just kind of came out of her mouth. It was delightful. It was really like it was like a master class in comedy working with those guys.
Right.
Yeah, she just blew our minds.
Awesome. Well, that's,
yeah. Thanks for your question. Thanks for watching.
appreciate it.
Yay. I'm gonna have to look this up, Duane. The Diagenic. I'm gonna send a follow-up email for everyone.
Hello,
Hello.
I'm Eric. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Eric.
Yeah, so as students, we obviously collaborate a lot, and I think in a lot of cases we'll co-direct stuff. And so I was really interested in, you mentioned a couple of times that you were kind of at Jess's throat, and you guys had some moments where you probably didn't see eye to eye. Wonder if you wouldn't talk a little bit more about that and just how you overcome those kind of maybe conflict of vision and maybe kind of your ways that you get through that.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I'm so happy that we came out on the other side of it. But there were a few like tense moments where like, I mean, one of them, and it was just often like little stylistic things like, I mean, even like color temperature, like when we were color correcting, like I tend to like things like warm and bold, and she wanted things like sort of little, like, you know, gentler and quiet and more subtle, and you know, just like things like that where it would be like, we just learned to actually talk about things in a compromised, no, hopefully not a compromised way, but in a way in which we were able to compromise, where we would say like, okay, could you just do it 2% more this way? Or like 4%. And I found that percentages really helped because it made it not so black and white, not like me versus you, but like, hey, could you just turn the knob a little this way? So, and when we started communicating that way, I think it actually eased a lot of tension because it wasn't like me versus her.
Yeah.
One thing that was pretty funny was like, there's a scene in the movie where like when we're fighting at the beach and she's like, I just wish you'd get out of my fucking face or something like that. Pardon my F-bomb there. But we were on the street like racing to get to the edit suite, and we had this like brawl in the street, not real physical brawl, but like we actually quoted the movie to each other in the fight, which was amazing. So I'm always superstitious about this stuff. So I was like, Jess, we can't write the end of the movie that they break up forever. Like, there still has to be some possibility of their friendship because I don't want it to like ruin our friendship, because clearly we used the dialogue from the movie to actually fight in real life. So, but it is kind of like a marriage, you know, like you kind of need to choose well. And then, you know, just communicate, like just communicate. And one thing that we stumbled upon right before we started shooting, we were walking in the East Village in New York City and we passed this like, I don't know what it was. It was like kind of an Indian store. And I think there was like this Hindu statue. And it was, I don't even remember what like Hindu god it was, but at the bottom of it, it said, kill your ego, live like fire. And that became like a mantra for us. It was just like, kill your ego. Let's like be as egoless as possible as we can in this. And I just think that's a great rule in general, to just like keep the bigger vision of what you're working on in mind, and like just be open and don't like get all puffed up. And I do find that filmmaking and collaborating, it's always gonna bring up some of those issues, but like try to keep it in check for yourself. Like, you know,
Yeah.
like that helped, because there were moments where I'm like, who does she think she is? 'Cause I am, and like that when you get into that place, it never
Sure.
helps. Yeah.
No, I think that's great advice. Another thing I was kind of, at least at the end of the film, I kept thinking to myself, because, you know, I hope to be a writer one day, and, you know, obviously want to direct stuff as well. And you do a really great job of having obviously a ton of really comedic, funny moments. There's also like a very beautiful, like human element to it. How do you walk that line of not getting overboard, especially with like dealing with all the amazing actors and reining it in and kind of still maintaining that the drama that's present in the film?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I feel like it's a little representative of my and Jess's personalities. Like we're both kind of silly and serious at the same time to some degree. We you know, there were criticisms of the movie where people were like, what is it? Is it a comedy? Is it a drama? Like, I think sometimes critics want, or even audiences want, like it to be defined comedy or defined drama. I tend to be of the mindset that some of the funniest things come from like the most difficult things in life, and it's kind of like the divine comedy. So I think that like the pathos is really important for, and the catharsis is also like important for the humor. So yeah, I think we wanted to keep it in some realm of like that. I don't know, it's interesting because I'm like trying to deepen that kind of tonal thing in my subsequent work. It's just like, how do I make it more dramatic and get more humor from the drama? Because the funniest stuff to me is like from the darkest stuff a lot.
Sure, agreed. Cool, thank you so much.
Good luck with everything and your writing and directing.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sterling. And I just, is this registering or did this stop? Can't even tell. I just wanted to ask you, so it sounds like this was really low budget and you shot it really quick. And I've just heard about other indie filmmakers talking about like kind of riding around the resources they have, you know, like if you have a hairless cat or have this, you know, write a scene with it. How much did you do that in your writing process?
That's a great question, because one way I have really enjoyed working is like when you get a group of people together, you just ask everyone like, what cool stuff do you have? And then people will be like, I have an albino snake, like I have like a Ford Mustang, like all these weird things come up, and then you're like, okay, we can work with this. So that's like a great, like I used to do the 48-hour film project when I was like first starting to make short films. And I guess I directed some of those actually. But like you work with a team of friends, and so we would all get together in the very beginning, and you have to write, you know, direct, edit, like write, shoot, edit, and have a finished product in 48 hours. So at the beginning, we would have this meeting where everybody would share all of the cool stuff they had, and then we'd just all bring it. So like Mandy's birds would be in it, or like whatever else, whatever other cool resource would then inspire the writing. With this, we wrote the hairless cat, like we had that idea because it seemed like a nice sort of like bookend with the cat she was allergic to in the beginning, and then like the hairless cat's like the hypoallergenic version. So that was an idea that we had on a walk one day. And then we were like, they're expensive, those cats. So we actually posted it on Facebook, and then one of our costume people, a friend of hers, had a hairless cat, and they were like delighted to bring the cat, and the cat was miraculously beautiful and strange. So I do feel like it's strangely sometimes like an ask and ye shall receive situation too when you make a movie. Like and it's amazing how people will support what you're doing, and it feels often like, especially with a low budget thing, and people can tell you're making it from your heart, and like people really do show up with kind of miraculous things. Like there's in the movie, I don't know if you remember at the end of the audition, she hits this thunder sheet that makes this really loud noise. It's kind of like a weird gong. And like we were telling a friend about the audition, he was like, "Oh yeah, I've got this thunder sheet. I don't know if you guys would want it." I'm like, "What's a thunder sheet?" "Okay, great, bring it." So things had a way of just kind of like showing up, and we used them like that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
One other question I have for you is, did you guys have any audience in mind besides yourselves when you wrote this?
It's a great question. And I'm trying to think what the answer to it would be. It's interesting because I think we made the movie and then thought maybe that younger women would actually like the movie. But like, I don't know, that maybe like high school students or college students would find some connection to it. And it's been surprising to see who likes it. It's been playing on the Movie Channel and Showtime, and it was playing some on HBO like since like Halloween. And strangely, I've heard really nice things from older women, like women in their 60s. I don't know why. I have no idea why that is. But yeah, I mean, I think we just kind of made something that tickled our fancy, maybe to a fault. You know, we didn't totally think about what the audience is, but it's funny, whenever I come up with a movie idea, my mom's like, "Well, who's the audience for that?" She's all like business. So I don't know. I'm sure in film school you're learning to think about those things too from the beginning. But I don't know. I guess we don't really think about it that carefully. Thankfully, it's found its own little world though, which has been really nice.
Yeah, no, it was super funny. I really enjoyed it. It was awesome. And it also felt very sincere, you know, and very genuine. So I like that. My one other question for you is, you mentioned you did some documentary before, and then you obviously really enjoyed doing this feature. Do you plan on doing more like narrative feature films in the future? Would you like to continue to do documentaries? What are kind of your plans with that?
I think I'm skewing in the narrative direction because I love acting and I love working with actors and I like writing fiction, but there's that expression like greater truth in fiction. I think sometimes we're given license to be more honest when we're telling a fictional story because there's not a personal relationship that you're worried about hurting as much. Like you can kind of take things from life or things that you observe and bring them into this fictional world, and I really enjoy that. But I think really in a way, one of my favorite movies that I've worked on was a movie called Red Flag, directed by a guy named Alex Karpovsky, and he's on the TV show Girls that's on HBO. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but he plays Ray, the guy who runs the coffee shop. Anyway, he directed this movie that was an improvised movie. But what was really cool about it was we were working with an outline. We went on a road trip from Birmingham, Alabama to Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and we made stops along the way. And every day we would figure out kind of where we were stopping and what scene needed to happen. But we would act out scenes in real situations. So it was like this hybrid of like documenting kind of the world, but creating fiction within the world. And you're always doing that to some extent. But what was so fun about this was like, you know, it was Mardi Gras, and so like we went to a Mardi Gras parade, and there's like a scene where his character decides that he wants to propose to his girlfriend, and it was just so great to like have all of that happen in the midst of people throwing beads and just life all happening around you. And for me, that was like a sweet spot. I just had so much fun bringing like theater to the world in a sense that I think as much as I can do that, I would be delighted. I highly recommend trying it. It's pretty fun, and you can definitely count on happy accidents occurring, which is one of my favorite things about filmmaking.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thank you.
How's it going? I'm Nick.
Good. Hey,
Good.
Nick, how's it going?
Doing good. So earlier on in the interview, you briefly mentioned mumblecore. And I actually was curious to know if that style of filmmaking influenced your personal film here, and if you might consider this film a mumblecore. And then if you could also kind of talk about what it's like to work with Mumblecore Films, because you had mentioned that you've worked with some filmmakers that are kind of prominent with that style of filmmaking.
Yeah, great question.
If you might even be willing to explain it a little, because I don't know if everyone here will know what Mumblecore is.
Sure. Happy to. Well, okay, so where do I start? So Mumblecore is, and I'm probably, I mean, it's on Wikipedia, you can look it up. They're like a handful of people, Andrew Bujalski and Joe Swanberg and the Duplass brothers, and the Duplass brothers are now like Togetherness on HBO, and they've got like Netflix deals, and they're really doing great stuff. But they made a movie called The Puffy Chair that really sort of took off, and they both, well, one of them acted in it, actually, not both of them. It's worth seeing, like historically, to see the evolution of these movies that were made for very little money that like people scrounged together or borrowed from their parents. And Joe Swanberg is based in Chicago, and he's the director that I worked with. And Jess had also worked with Joe in a wonderful movie called Alexander the Last. And that was kind of where I saw her first and just loved her performance in that. It's a really cool way of working, and I really admire and respect it. And I feel really lucky and grateful that I got to make my first feature with Joe, because it's just a, like, you know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, just get her done kind of approach. And different people do it differently, but Joe's approach is largely just like writing an outline for something and then finding people that I mean, originally, now he's working with a lot of famous people, but in the beginning, he would just find people that he thought were interesting and he would like to see in these scenarios. And then he would set them up in a room and have them improvise. And like sometimes there would be like a line of dialogue or something that needed to happen within the context of that scene. And he'd maybe shoot like 2 or 3 takes of each thing. Very basic, like he shot the whole thing. We made this movie called Uncle Kent in 2010 for $4,000. He'd already made several movies before that, though. He's really prolific. But he shot himself. I mean, he shot with his own camera, but he also filmed himself in the movie. And he set up a boom mic on a stand. So there was like nobody working on the movie, essentially. It was like a lot of still shots and very basic audio. I mean, the movie is kind of slow moving. I love it because I got to work on it. It was my first like feature that I got to like really jump in on in that way. And we just had a ball doing it, and it's really fun improvising. But the really brilliant thing, and it has its upsides and downsides, is that you're not suffering writing a script in a room alone by yourself. Mm-hmm. So he just doesn't suffer. Like Joe just gets out there and comes up with the little outline, which sometimes is just a page long, and then gets the people that he thinks would be interesting together, and then shoots it and does like 2 or 3 takes. And then he's such a hardworking person. He just would edit in the night. So we'd be shooting 12 or so hours in a day, and then he'd stay up until 3 in the morning and really just edit stuff together. So by the time we only shot that movie for 6 days, by the time we were done shooting, he had edited like 63 minutes together, and we watched a rough cut of it. And then it got into Sundance, and it was like this amazing thing. So I got to see someone just get in there and do it. And that was really inspiring to me. I think what I wanted to do differently was I wanted to really script something, and I really wanted to work from a script and have that be more a part of it, because I just wanted it. I wanted to make a faster paced movie, and I wanted to make a more sort of, I guess, comedic movie. So I figured it would be helpful. And I think Jess felt the same way. We just thought it would be useful to have a script. And I really love improv, but like right now I'm working on a film outline that's really detailed outline. It's like 40-page outline. And then, so each scene is like pretty well defined, and then there's like maybe a little bit of dialogue, and it's in a regular script format done in like Final Draft. But it's unusual. I mean, I guess the Duplesses call things like this more of like a script mint. So it's like a lot of it's there, just not the whole thing. So I'm trying to actually make my next project that way. So it's like really structured, but then there's a lot of room to like discover it. But because I just kind of actually want to shorten the amount of writing time, because that's what you can get lost in sometimes. And it is wonderful to write. I do find that it's really helpful to have a partner or something to keep you moving, because when I'm writing alone, I get dark and me to myself. Like you get like, I didn't write enough today, I suck. Well, like all this negative thinking can happen. So it does help to have a partner or to just try to make it happen quicker, I've been finding. But then there is also a gift in rewriting. So if you have the patience and the will to sit in that chair and write, if you can give yourself permission to like go back and rewrite that thing several drafts, the thing that will come out of it will be pretty cool. But if you can rehearse with actors who are improvising and then turn that into a script, then you're Mike Lee. And he has a wonderful career. So I highly recommend that as well.
Cool.
I don't know if that answers all of it, but
No, it definitely does. It raises one about improv, but there's quite a line. So I'm going to let someone else ask.
oh, sure. Or what's your improv question just really fast and I'll answer
with,
really
with
fast.
the improv, how do you know when to cut off the actors or to cut the scene? How do you keep a scene to stay within the boundaries? And as like an actor and watching actors when they improv, how do you know when the actors have kind of lost that real feel to them and they in a sense just started acting like they're it's not as sincere with that connection that they're truly making. It's just like, oh, I could say this and it'll be funny.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's a habit people have to break themselves of too. Just like being real over being funny. Like sometimes the funniest thing is just being real. So if you're trying too hard, and this is something you kind of often have to direct people to do or to break themselves of that habit. It's a bad habit. It's a habit I have sometimes, like where I'm like, I'm funny. And then it just gets in the way. I mean, one of the cool things that Joe did that I think really worked was that he had people show up and they didn't necessarily know what was going to happen or what they were going to talk about. And usually he liked to keep the character names the same as the people so it was not confusing. So when people have a real conversation that's new, if you're really talking and listening to the other person, like you would hopefully with a real friend or whatever, or a human being that you're interacting with, stuff comes out of that. And it's actually what's so cool about it is it's often better than acting from a script with non-professional actors because it's just more honest and naturalistic and authentic. So if you can kind of keep people on their toes and make sure that they're listening to each other and like paying attention, and also that they don't know what's coming next, that's what keeps it fresh. What really stunts it is like when you start like having people like, hey, do it again, do that again, and say it this way. I find that sometimes that actually makes it worse, unless people are really practiced actors or really like have studied the lines and like really have it so that it comes out naturalistically. And I do think you get better over time. The more you direct, the more you just kind of get impatient with stuff. Like in the beginning of making things, like I would let people go on a lot longer and I do a lot more takes. And the more I've done it, the more efficient you get because you're just like, I don't need that much in the editing room. There's like a point of diminishing returns. It's not necessarily getting better. I mean, sometimes you can make it get better, but you'll have to shift the energy to make it better. So I don't know if that answers the question.
No, that definitely does. Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, you're welcome.
How you holding up, Jenny? You holding up all right?
Oh yeah, I'm great. How are you guys?
Oh, I'm doing fine. We got two more questions for you.
Sure, my pleasure. It's fun talking to you guys.
We got three. We got three. Is that okay?
My favorite number.
That's fine.
Hi, my name's Taylor.
Hey, Taylor.
And so this was your directorial debut, right?
For feature film, yes. Yeah, I'd done like 48-hour film projects. I'd done like little short films and then, you know, like the documentary kind of stuff and web videos. But this was like jumping into feature.
Okay. So I was wondering, as a first-time director of a feature film, what was the most challenging part of filming? Was there anything that caught you off guard or something you didn't plan?
There were lots of funny things. It's a fun question to think about. I mean, there were all those jelly beans I ate and nobody saw. It was terrible. The fire was actually really, that was an intense day. Like, because we didn't have much time, like we were trying to cram things in, and people get sort of sloppy because we were all a little frantic, like, oh God, we gotta do this, we gotta do this. And then when the fire was happening on the roof, like it was actually really windy and we had to time everything perfectly with the sunset because the sun was going down and we had very limited time. And people were all over the place. And I did find that that was like one moment I got really stern, and it shifted the energy and it actually really helped. But it's like one of those things where you're like, ugh, you don't want to like yell at people. I feel like you have to save it for a special occasion, but it really did help because it kind of snapped us all out of whatever crazy energy we were in. So yeah, there were moments like that. Working with animals is always unusual because you just don't know what's going to happen or what they're going to do. It always helps to have animal treats. I've heard working with babies and older people is also really challenging. Something to keep in mind. When we filmed in the water, that was an interesting set of challenges. We were in a state park, and so it was a public park, and we paid like, I think $25 to get the permit. It was really affordable, but we were blocking people's beach access when we were in some of the scenes. So people were getting mad at us and yelling at us. And since we were shooting in LA, people are really like, they're just so over Hollywood. So they're like, you guys are ruining our time at the beach. And like, and you're like, oh gosh, sorry, we didn't mean to. So there were like moments like that, but the water was actually really freezing when we were filming, even though it was August. And I kept popping up out of the water. I couldn't stay under for some weird reason. And I was like really cold and I got sort of hypothermic. And you have to hire a lifeguard when you're filming in the ocean and it's under a permit like that. So like it was hard to keep me under. We barely got enough footage to like string together. We actually had to reverse some shots or reverse one shot and reuse it so that we had enough footage underwater. I was in the water for probably a half an hour and I came out like freezing cold. So like the hair and makeup person, like the lifeguard was like, she's mildly hypothermic. And then like the hair and makeup person had to just lie on top of me with a bunch of towels, which was very nice of her. So she took one for the team.
Jennifer, are you there? Uh-oh. No. She's frozen up a little bit. It was a touch. No,
you get to that place in the whole thing. So I guess just stay open and dance with it, whatever comes your way, because it may actually be a gift, was the lesson I learned.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
I better go because there's a couple more people who want to ask.
I love it. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Hey, my name is Luke.
Hey, Luke.
I had a question about casting, like between the writing process and to the time of actually getting a good cast together, what was the biggest challenge, between like the contacts and just trying to get people to commit,
We just got so lucky because this project had such wonderful momentum. Like it just happened really fast. This does not always happen this way. I mean, like the movie Carol, like that took like 10 years plus to get made, and it was worth it. And it's so good that people stick with these things. I don't know if I would have the like tenacity to keep going because it's so discouraging when it takes such a long amount of time. So I guess like stay the course. But in this situation, it was a 6-week writing process. We got financing right away. And then because Jess and I had the connection to Will Forte and she had the connection to Megan Mullally, when they got involved, our financiers were like, okay, we'll put a little more money into this because you guys got some good people. There's sometimes like, it's a dance between casting and financing sometimes. Sometimes you need to get a person attached before you can get money, and sometimes you need money before you can get a person attached. So if you kind of have to try to leverage both things at the same time to some extent. I do find that personal relationships with people really help. Like whether it's with an agent, and I know that's hard, especially when you're starting out. It's like, how are you supposed to get to know these people? But I mean, starting with friends can be a really good place. Or, you know, the way I've actually worked with some younger filmmakers is like people having seen me in something. And I think that this happens for a lot of people. It's like, if you just write to people that you really like and stuff, and you just tell them how enthusiastic you are about their work and what you really loved about it, you kind of create relationships. And then, like, you know, you can even do that over Facebook sometimes and just say like, hey, I don't know if this is the best way to reach you, but I really love your work. And, you know, if you don't want me to reach you through Facebook, like, what is the right way to reach you? And or just tell me to piss off, but I just love what you do, and I have this role, and I think you'd be perfect, and I'd really love for you to read it. That's one way. I mean, also, the more Hollywood you get, the more you have to like work with people with their agent. So like, here's the thing: if we hadn't known Will Forte, I don't know that his agent would have let him do this movie. But because he said he wanted to do it, she put up with us. But it's in an agent's best interest to have their clients do like bigger stuff that makes more money, because then they make more money. And so, you know, Will really did this as a favor to us, which was a huge gift. And he only shot for one day, one very long day, in which we didn't get him back to his hotel until 7 a.m. So he was such a trooper. But, you know, if you do make those connections and relationships, like, that really can help. And sometimes you have to be crafty and creative about how you do it. Yeah, we Jess's agent, Rhonda Price, just really championed us. So that helped us get Sarah Steele, who is also a wonderful actress who Duane worked with. She's one of the girls in the bathroom that we get into the brawl with. So we actually did casting for that role. But I mean, obviously, we knew we wanted to cast her. We cast the other girl that was the singer. Anyway, I don't know if I'm answering your question or if there are any more specific questions around casting that I can.
Oh, no, that's perfect, because I just have, you know, I'm always trying to network a little bit more, and I really find it difficult to network with, you know, some people who are on other YouTube channels, because they kind of live in a hobbit hole, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And you want to kind of reach out to them and say, hey, I really like your work. I'd like to work with you, or, you know,
Yeah.
kind of have you work with me, something like that, you know?
Sometimes it really helps if you bring a specific thing to someone. Like, are you doing stuff on YouTube right now? Do you have a YouTube channel?
I do. I have a podcast. So
oh, awesome.
I do a podcast for, you know, to help get more experience.
That's great. I think that's a really good thing to do. And something that could really be helpful, I guess, in terms of like connecting with people is like, you know, if you have a podcaster that you really love, or an actor, or whoever it is, a director, you can reach out to them and just say, I do this podcast. I'd love to interview you for 10 minutes on it, or whatever it is. And, you know, be specific, be cool, like, and just like sometimes create a specific ask. And I think interviewing people can be a great way to get to know them, because it shows them you're interested in their work, and then it creates a relationship. And then like down the line, when you have something else that you want to do with them, you know, you can do that. And in the meantime, maybe they'll tweet your podcast or whatever else. I mean, you know all this stuff, but like I think when you reach out to someone with a specific ask too, and you're just like, hey, could I interview you for 10 minutes on my podcast? Like, that can open some doors in really cool ways. But I mean, yeah, I love working with my friends. I love working with people who are cool. And, you know, and I love people that I've worked with before too, because you have a shorthand. And, you know, like, it was so much fun to come to Utah and make the short film that we made there with Fem in the fall. And like, I'm just like, I would love to work with any of those students again. And, you know, and obviously working with Duane is so great, and working with Mandy is so great. So you just are like, you really look forward to whenever things align that you get to work with your friends again.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah,
All right.
good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello,
Hey, how's it going?
I'm Evan. I'll just be really quick. So the fact that this is your first feature film that you've directed is really important for us, because I think that's somewhere that all of us would like to be at some point, be able to say I've directed or participated in a feature film in some way. And so my question is, what would you say from your experience doing this film is the most important thing to kind of get the ball rolling? Like if you had a project in mind, you know, and what would you say would be the best thing to do to get started, to get
Just
this?
like the Nike motto, just do it. I mean, there's so much of that. Like the first feature that I acted in, I mean, it was $4,000. We shot it over 6 days. It got into Sundance. I mean, there were some lucky things involved in that. Joe Swanberg was sort of a known person, whatever. My point here is that you can just do it, and you can just make it. I mean, I'm learning new ways to work that help the just do it approach, but like you don't need a lot of money. You don't need an incredible camera. Like, I don't know if you guys have seen the movie Tangerine. It was shot on an iPhone. Obviously it's an incredible movie. Duane actually knows Sean Baker. I'm sure you guys maybe have seen the movie or maybe CineSKyped with him or something, but it's an awesome movie. He's a singular filmmaker, so it helps to have exciting ideas, but just take whatever ideas you have and do something. Like, even if it's just making a short film, I learned so much from being in Utah and making the short film that we made. And it's just like great practice. So like the more you do it, you know, that philosophy of like 10,000 hours, like just get out there with friends. And you can, I mean, something that I did was the 48-hour film project, and I did it every year for like 5 years. But like you can even set up like a thing where you're like, let's make one short film a month, or like let's spend a weekend every 3 months making a short. Like just start going. I mean, the other thing that I find is really helpful, like, because script writing is a time-consuming process, but the outlining process has really been helping me. And so basically I'll just like write interior, whatever the location is, or exterior, and then what's happening in that place. And then I try to like map it out, and then just take that map and do something with it. But like just do it in bite-sized ways, and don't get overwhelmed, and know that like you can do it. Like you just need a camera, sound, an idea, actors, and just like play, like just have fun. And you know, eat, you know, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and just like hang out for the day, or live with people for a week, or you know, like, or make stuff with your roommates. Like that's all great. Or like, I don't know, go find somebody whose parents have like a vacation home, and then like all go there and then make a movie in that place. Like these simple ideas, single location things are really good, cheap ways to like get started and just make something happen.
Sure.
I don't know if that helps, but you can do it is the thing.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. Enjoyed the movie.
Yeah, good luck. Thanks so much for watching, you guys. And I don't know if I said this before, but Jess was sorry she couldn't join us today. But she was really excited that you guys were watching the movie, and sends her best.
It would have been really fun to have heard you guys' back and forth.
Oh my gosh, we are kind of ridiculous together. Yeah, it's fun.
Well, thank you so much. That was great. You also plugged, we're actually doing Tangerine in a few weeks, doing Sean Baker next month. So you gave us.
You're in for a treat. And it's very cool, Duane, that you are connected to him, because he's like a really neat filmmaker to know. And I really admire what he's doing a lot. I think he's doing some of the most interesting work of like people in our kind of little indie scene. I mean, it's a very vast and diverse indie scene, but I look at his work and I'm like, okay,
I met him at a party 5 years ago, so it's just
Yeah.
things happen.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You so much.
Yeah, this was great. So everyone, let's give her a hand.
I'm gonna give Duane a hand for being so awesome and just doing such cool stuff with students. And you guys are lucky because he's just so involved as a filmmaker. He's tapped into LA. He just knows great people, but he's also such a wonderful teacher and filmmaker. And I wish I was a student there because I think I would really get a lot out of being in class with you guys. But I'm so glad I got to spend this evening.
Well, thanks.
The best.
Bust my buttons.
Yeah.
All right, Jennifer, you're great.
You
And
guys
so
are great.
we will talk soon, hopefully. In fact, yes, I have to talk to you very soon. I'll probably give you a call tomorrow about something.
Excellent.
All right.
Talk soon, everyone. Bye. Good luck with all your stuff.
Thank you.